The art of losing isn't hard to master. So many things seem filled with the intent to be lost that their loss is no disaster. Lose something every day, accept the fluster of lost door keys, the hour badly spent. The art of losing isn't hard to master. Then practice, losing farther, losing faster, places and things and names of where it was you meant to travel. None of these will bring disaster. One art is a poem written by Elizabeth Bishop, which encompasses loss as if it were an art that could be mastered, comparing it to other things such as the art of crocheting, the art of cross-stitching, or the art of painting. However, this is not how we normally tend to view loss. When thinking about loss, other words often pop into our mind, such as mourning, traumatic events, or tragedy. However, everybody here goes through loss and lives through loss every single day, sometimes without even noticing. You miss the bus, you fail a quiz, you sleep through an alarm. Every day, you, as a person, face minuscule disruptions. How many people here have once learned how to ride a bicycle? Okay, a few. So I would like to imagine that at first you learned to ride it with training wheels. Yes, with training wheels. And then you were left to stumble and fall around when they were removed. Through scrapes and bruises, you learned to focus on the road ahead of you. I view this as sort of like learning to lose in order to win. Let me formally introduce myself. My name is Emily MacMillan. I am in my second year of nursing here at UNB. I am the nursing representative on the student union, and I myself am a fellow expert on mastering the art of losing. When I was a child, my mother was diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disease called Behçet's. This is a disease in which the autoimmune system attacks itself mistakenly instead of attacking foreign bodies, such as viruses or bacteria. This is a disease more comparable to other diseases that you may be a little bit more familiar with, such as MS or lupus. As my mother experienced the everyday loss of her own body, I was able to master the art of independence, the art of empathy, and the art of losing at a very young age. A little background on the woman who gave birth to me. My mother was a registered nurse. She balanced 3 jobs while going to school and still managed to come out with a successful career. No one works that hard to maintain a job that they do not absolutely have pure passion for. Nursing is a tough career, although it is arguably one of the most rewarding careers that there are. You witness struggle, you view tears fall of loss, pain, and sadness. You see people build themselves back up, restored with health, but you view others crumble and crack like a house after a natural disaster is hit. My mother's body is her own natural disaster. Her disease has taken away from her what a tornado would to her house, stripping her of a career, her passion, everything that she built herself up to become. She went from kissing me on the forehead to leaving to go to work at the hospital, to kissing me on the forehead to me leaving her at the hospital. She went from nurse to patient, from caregiver to care receiver, from bedside assistance to being 90 pounds occupying a small portion of a hospital bed, wrapped in sheets, drenched of the smell of bleach like something that had tried to bring clean of its history. I wonder how many people wrapped in those same sheets have likewise experienced loss. Although sick herself, my mother could never be rid of her nursing abilities. As a patient, my mom helped a multitude of her roommates. In one instance, my mother had to call code on one of her roommates as they had stopped breathing. In another instance, my mother helped one of her roommates through communication techniques after they had a stroke. And then lastly, my mother was the only one in the hospital who could tell you why her roommates' blood sugars were so high. And that was because their family had brought them in a full meal unbeknownst to any of the staff or caregivers. In 2006, my mother was told that she would never walk again. The chronic inflammation that she was experiencing in her hips and sacral joints had made it unbearable for her to bear her weight at any distance. Memory. My mother's wheelchair, lightning blue, fit to her small, frail shell of a body. When I was in the 3rd grade, my mother had a benefit to help us financially support the weight that illness bears. Memory. Singing at the event, dancing at the event, laughing at the event with my mother's friends. Although this was not necessarily a joyous event, the social butterfly that I was and still continue to be daily took the opportunity to have a good time. My mother was told twice that she was going to die. Her body systems were under attack, and the doctors did not believe that any medications or treatment were going to help her. They suggested a tumor necrosis fighting agent, which cost $8,000 per month out of pocket, in addition to chemotherapy injections done at home and oral corticosteroids. She has at times felt like an inadequate mother, missing snippets of her children's memories, growth and development, unable to see my acting practices because she was unable to manage the stairs, missed memories, missed firsts, missed school projects, and unable to fully comfort me through the line of a telephone. Memory. Being so heartbroken I could not visit my mother in the hospital because I had contracted a virus from public school. Big shocker. Knowing farewell that this virus could very much endanger my mother's health. Growing up with an ill mother did make my life different than others my age. However, it is the way that I grew up that has made me who I am today. Strong like my father, strong like my mother. Strong like the backbone of a house that still stands after a natural disaster. That still manages to wake up in the morning and water the garden in the backyard. Because, hey, life goes on. With disruption and with loss comes pre-existing responsibilities. Although my mother was sick and in the hospital while I was in school, I still managed to make it to school every day. It just meant that I had to figure out a new normal. Whether that meant living with a friend, living with a family member, or perhaps staying at my grandparents'. I have memories of my mother ill and days in which I forget that my childhood, although normal to some, is out of the population's general norm. 10 childhood memories in no chronological order. 1, learning to ride a bicycle in the garage my father built by hand, guarded by garbage bags that were there to help me if I wobble off to the side. 2, walking into the bathroom of my house, my father needle to my mother's thigh. 3, raising over $1,000 for the Terry Fox Foundation in middle school because my cousin at the age of 22 passed away of the same cancer, osteosarcoma. 4, my mother's hand shaking so hard IV intact signing my homework in elementary school. Her signature looked like that of a 5-year-old. 5. The first time, and only time I should mention skiing because I am a huge klutz. Calling my mother on the phone and letting her know about how excited I was to experience something new. Her response of, "That's great, honey," counteracted my excitement in a way that I can't really convey to you today. The crack in her voice meant something was wrong. I did not understand this as a child, but as a mother and as a parent, she was missing a first. 6, playing with the dollhouse with my mother, her smile, contagious. 7, one of the times my mother was in the hospital, my father, brother, and I were at home, and we awoke to the basement flooding, okay? Not a very good situation. The breakfast was burnt that morning because the water damage had distracted the chef. Water damage was not to be told to my mother, as she already had way too much on her plate, as did I, trying to distinguish what the black soot I was plated was. 8, watching a hockey game with my mother, holding her hand proudly in the wheelchair section. 9, swimming. 10, crying. My house only feels like an empty home without her here. My mother will continue to be one of the strongest people that I know. She has taught me how to appreciate the moments in life that matter most. My mother built herself up as strong as can be, only to have it all taken away from her. I have sat in the hospital bed with my mother as a doctor walked in, saw her, and said, "I was expecting much worse." Like comparing her disease to Google Images rather than to her as a person. This statement is kind of like a slap in the face to anybody who ever experiences an invisible illness. It is sort of like saying illness is only valuable when being able to be seen outside of the body in form of pallor, hair loss, or ulcers. Despite disruption and the constant uncertainty that my life contained, I not only decided to live my life fully, but I decided to pave my own path. I constructed my own form of life. I focused on the world around me. I saw it through my own eyes. I volunteered. I took the energy that I had and I dispersed it into things worthwhile of my time. I acted. I wrote and performed poetry. I created this high school group at my school called Operation Sunshine, in which the goal was to raise money and items for a school food bank, clothing bank, prom dress bank, soup bank, anything, you name it, we had it, and if we didn't, I would find it. I got my license despite having incredibly crippling driving anxiety to the point that I never thought that I would ever make it in the driver's seat ever again. And this right here allowed me more independence, as I lived 30 minutes outside of the city that I attended high school. I got a job. It was great. I earned a scholarship. I got accepted into the faculty of nursing at UNB. I stayed humble, I stayed friendly, knowing that at any point, everything that I have built myself up to become could be left and taken away from me in the moment of this, like a carpet taken out from underneath my feet. It is how you choose to deal with the loss that is brought your way that will determine how you will continue to live your life. Some people are so saddened by what the world has given to them that all they can do is curl up and try to forget about it. Some people are so outraged of what the world has done to them that their anger and hate towards the world often secretes itself into matters outside of the internal problem. And some try to find balance, or at least try to accept what the world gives them. This is where I stand. Everything that I experience daily is a learning curve. I do not view myself as a victim. I am who I am for what I've had to overcome. Without disruption, where is growth? Without personal loss, how does one grow? How does one prosper? I've never looked at my mother as somebody corrupted by an illness. I looked at her as my mom. She's experienced loss like no other, and she has had to accept the fluster. Through her, I have mastered the art of losing. I encourage you guys to take from my talk, if anything, one thing. We are constantly faced with disruption and loss. Take what is brought your way and do with it in a positive manner. Whether it be personal loss or school stresses, continue to move on, because with these stresses come pre-existing responsibilities such as showering, eating, and sleeping that do not halt with a bump in the road. Continue to live your life despite what has brought your way. Find a new normal. Today, my mother, Heather, who is sitting here today, is 43 years old and walking. Her lightning blue wheelchair still stands in the corner of my house collecting dust. Today, I am 19 years old. I understand the importance of believing and listening. I understand that disease is not always visible, neither is pain, and that healthcare providers should listen to their patients rather than to assume that one is drug-seeking. People are not their setbacks, their bad days, their diseases, or losses. People are who they say they are and who they convey that they are. I feel as if I'm going into my career with a book bag of experiences. Memories that my mother has taught me, things that I have gone through that will help me perform my career in a humbling and humane manner. My mother will help me continue to strive daily. Her strength is contagious. My mother is an example. My mother is pure love. My mother is hilarious. My mother is amazing. I love my mother so much, and she is the reason that I will become an empathetic, caring, and believing nurse, because this is what life has given to me. Continue to love, continue to learn, continue to go through things, although things might not always go as planned. And I will never dust that chair. Thank you.